let me say the most important thing that I practiced for this presentation. Stravo. No, strava. Stravo? Stravo. Perfect. At least I got something halfway right. See, this is where GenAI can help. We were talking over lunch or over late lunch that live translation in the GenAI era, especially in my ear, would be a really good thing. Now, I've got about 15 minutes that are counting down to talk to you about what have we learned from GenAI in practice in financial services. Now, that's not a lot of time, but I'll do my best to give you 3 main lessons learned that we have that I hope can help everybody here to use them as best practices to scale your own GenAI initiatives. Before I do that, though, I want to start with the most important thing. And for me, the most important thing is that I can now say something on a stage like this that I never thought I could say before, neither when I was a banker nor now that I'm in technology. And that is that our industry, financial services, is actually leading in adopting a new technology. Anybody would have believed we ever do that? And the good thing for Microsoft is I don't need to do a survey of 1,000 CEOs. I can just look at the data, given where we are in the market and the partnership we have with OpenAI. There's not a single industry in this world that consumes more generative AI services than banking and insurance. And that's something that completely astonishes me. There's a little lie in there, which is there's one industry that consumes a little bit more, which is telco and media, but that has a large number of big social media companies in there, which is just an unfair comparison. We are really at the forefront of embracing this technology, and that makes me incredibly proud. So I want to start off with that, and when I was thinking through what have we learned over the last almost 2 years now since GenAI is with us, and what can I share with you in 15 minutes, I came up with these 3. So, let's start with the first one, more than create. This is GenAI, my very, very simplified version of generative AI. It can do 3 things. It can understand us, what we want. It can reason, even before the O1 model. It could reason over data, reason over inputs, and it creates outputs. Now, the problem with that is that we tend to over-index, overemphasize the last part, the create part. And I understand why, because it's exciting. It can summarize the latest regulatory texts that are coming in. It can write code for me. It can do fantastic pictures and images. The create part, it's in the name. It's generative AI. That's why we're so excited about it. But what we don't pay enough attention to is the very first one, the understand part. It naturally understands us. And that is of fundamental importance because it completely reshapes the way that we interact with technology. Whether it's our phones, whether it's our laptops, it doesn't matter, and everything that runs on them. It's a fundamental new way to interact with technology. And now, the best way that I can always show this is because we're a room full of people that have been living and breathing banking or insurance for our lives. We've all sat in front of an Excel sheet at some point. And what we would normally do is, we have a lot of numbers. We would go to a pivot table, we write a formula. If you're really good, we do a macro. If you're really, really good, you do some Python in there. Now we don't need to anymore. Instead of clicking and writing, we just ask, and GenAI does. And that's a fundamentally different way to use technology, and it doesn't just apply to Excel. It's just an example that we all know and are familiar with. It applies to everything and anything, and that's really transformational. We don't pay enough attention to that. And now that models are multimodal, that models can see the same things we see, they can hear the same things we hear, the world is becoming our prompt. And that is so important because it's only the beginning. GenAI right now is entering a next phase when GenAI becomes AI agents that intuitively use the same tools, the same systems that you use, and take autonomous and asynchronous actions in them for you. And these AI agents that understand us are going to be the new apps. AI agents are going to be the new apps. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is the last time that we as an industry had such a fundamental shift on the customer interface, let's be honest with each other, we missed the boat. That was when we went from web first to mobile first. And we weren't the first ones on that one, right? But it required us to fundamentally rethink how we engage customers, how we empower employees, how you run your operations, and how you design your products. And this shift is happening in the next 3 years. And that's going to be just as big. So we really need to start understanding it. We need to look at more than just the create part of generative AI, the understand part, and how it's reshaping the customer and employee interface. That's number one. The second one that I wanted to talk to you about is that we shouldn't go hunting for pink unicorns. Now, in order to make sense of that, I need to show you what is everybody actually doing with generative AI. This is my little broad overview of what we see every bank and every insurer doing. Now, before I go into the details, let me say one thing to begin with. This looks linear, like you go from left to right. It's not. There's just so much you can do in PowerPoint. Every bank, every insurer picks their own starting point and picks their own progress along this one. But I'm going to give you a bit of an idea of what I mean with these different areas. Now, area number one, it's pretty clear. It's productivity of the individual. We are all knowledge workers one way or another. Whether you're in banking, you work in retail, it doesn't matter. There's knowledge work everywhere. Answering your emails, being in Teams meetings, all of these things. And that's really what this area one is all about, giving you GenAIs, in our instance, co-pilots that help you just get rid of as much of this mundane knowledge work. The biggest use case I have personally when I'm traveling, and I'm traveling all week, is every evening I open my laptop, I ask our co-pilot, what are the top 5 things that I've missed? In emails and Teams chat, give me a summary, tell me what actions were taken, and tell me if there's anything that I need to do, and it just does it. That's knowledge work. The interesting thing happens when you go kind of from area 1 to area 2. And area 2 is all about customized GenAI solutions, customized to our industry, to your company, or to the individual persona, whether that's somebody working in finance, somebody working in fraud, or a relationship manager. And what everybody is doing in this area is 2 things. Number one, everybody's putting GenAI in their contact centers. Because nobody in the contact center ever joined that contact center of your bank to do Control-C, Control-V between 15 different systems, which is what they mainly do today. The first ones to do that were actually ABN AMRO. They brought GenAI live in their contact center around about June, July timeframe last year. And bear in mind, this technology only became enterprise grade around April. So they were very fast. And the first thing they did was use GenAI for post-call documentation. Every time you hang up with a contact center, they need to document what they talk to you about. And they found a couple of things with that one. Number one, they found out it is really helping efficiency. They save 4 minutes per call per agent. If you multiply that across your contact center, that's pretty big. The second thing they found out, that people are a lot happier. And they don't leave as quickly as they do. And if you ask anyone who's managing your contact center, churn. People leaving the contact center, then you have acquisition cost of new talents, you've got training cost of new talents. That's the biggest headache they have. What ABN AMRO saw, if you take away this annoying mundane work, people stay. The third thing they really didn't expect, and that's that suddenly they understand their customers much, much better. Because guess what? GenAI doesn't miss anything. It notes everything down. And there's so much dead knowledge today in contact centers. When I'm traveling like right now, imagine I was at a restaurant. I want to pay, my credit card doesn't work. I call my bank, UBS. I say, guys, my credit card stopped working. I'm sitting here with my family. I can't pay. What ends up in the post-call documentation from the contact center is something along the lines of geolocation error, fixed, payment working. The fact that my bank has no idea that suddenly I have a family, because last time I spoke to them was 10 years ago, never makes it anywhere. GenAI writes it down there, puts it into the CRM, and we all know the next best action flows that come after that one. So that's contact center. That's one thing that everybody does. The second one that everybody does is agent and sales co-pilots. The first ones who did this was, again, very, very early, around May timeframe, Morgan Stanley. They brought this out together with OpenAI, and basically for them, the way they describe it is that now every bank advisor in their wealth management era has the chief information officer, product specialists, market analysts in their pocket 24/7. It's a game changer for how they advise people. And the one example that I always give here is also Pictet. You might be familiar with them. They're a large wealth manager based in Switzerland. And the reason I always emphasize them is because they did the same thing as Morgan Stanley. They created GenAI Assistant for their relationship managers. And they brought it live in November last year. Now, the interesting thing is not the use case. The interesting thing is that it took them 5 months. 5 months to bring that GenAI solution live. A private bank based in Switzerland, regulated by FINMA, which is not an easy regulator to deal with. They're very strict. And a number of the C-levels, it's a partnership, still have the same name as Pictet above the door. They're very conservative, and if they can do it in 5 months, I always say there should not be any single bank or any insurer that takes longer for any GenAI project. Now, the third thing and last thing that I'll mention here, otherwise we spend hours on this slide, is the third thing that everybody else is doing when it comes to starting their GenAI journey, and that is conversational banking. Using a banking bot today is like going to the dentist. Nobody wants to do it. You have to basically memorize a list of keywords, otherwise the bot just doesn't know what you want it to do. GenAI changes this. It understands us even if we're just babbling in there and saying lots of different things at the same time because we may be in a rush. It'll pick out what we want from it. It understands us, the first point that I made at the beginning. It also understands the universe of the bank. And then it actually needs to be able to take actions on your behalf. And the ones that are taking this the furthest is actually Commerce Bank. Commerce Bank is not just bringing live a GenAI assistant at the customer interface, they're even putting an avatar across it. They had castings with a lot of people, and it turns out that you need to do castings for avatars because only actors are good at acting like normal people. Normal people are apparently not good enough. And Ava is the lady that they casted. They created 3D rasterization. Takes about 10 minutes of video to do this, and she's going to be the new front end of the bank going live this year. And the important thing is Ava, as I said before, cannot just tell you, oh, this is the information, this is that. They integrated her after two-factor authentication fully into the bank systems. So she cannot just say, this is what money is in your account. She can do transfers for you. She can block your credit card. She can take actions on your behalf. And normally we see about 25% increase in self-service rates, which means less stuff that goes to the contact center. Happier customers with higher net promoter score because they just get stuff done. And of course, an improved cost-income ratio when you do that right. So those are the kind of things that everybody's looking at in starting the journey. But I didn't show this to tell you what everybody else is doing. In case you haven't noticed, the reason why I showed you this was avoid pink unicorn hunting. And what I mean by this is there's not a single thing on that slide before that is new. I didn't tell you anything new. No use case was new on there. As an industry, we've been talking about the same things for 10 to 15 years now. We never had a shortage of innovation ideas when it comes to AI. We've always had a shortage of execution. And now it's really like the dam has broken and everybody is working through the things we know that work. And I sometimes have CEOs who come to me that say, Martin, tell me something that you can do with GenAI that I've never heard of before. That's the wrong mental framework to use. If you try to wait for the pink unicorn, something that is so novel you've never heard of before, you're missing doing all the things you know that work and you know that drive value. So that's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3, beware of tunnel vision. Now, I've used the word productivity quite a bit, but is that really all there is? Sometimes it feels like that, right? Everybody's talking about the productivity increases from GenAI, and again, I can understand why. On average, we're seeing 40% increase in productivity of the different GenAI cases with an upper limit of around 70%. And if you aggregate that up across the different jobs that people are doing, because jobs consist of multiple tasks that get optimized, it's around about 15% end-to-end cost savings. So I understand why. But that's not all there is. And if we just focus on that, we're missing really important dimensions that can lead us to making the wrong decisions. Number 1 is you can look deeper into it, and number 2 is you can look broader across it. If you look deeper into it, what you realize is that to us individuals who work, what GenAI does is not just allow us to do more and to do things faster. It actually superpowers us. And what I mean by superpowering us is there's been a fantastic study done, MIT, Harvard, Warwick University, and a number of others. And that study was interesting because it actually gave people GenAI assistants and asked them to do things that they already know how to do. And they wanted to see, do people actually get qualitatively better? Not just faster and cheaper and all of this, but do they get qualitatively better? And the outcome was yes. The outcome was actually that people became 40% better at doing the things they were already skilled at doing. 40% quality improvement. And that's amazing. That's what I mean by superpowering us. having a GenAI assistant on our side makes us better at what we're already good at. Now, the downside was actually in the experiment 19% lower quality of work. So there's also an important aspect of risk management and picking the right cases, but let's leave that for the discussion. The second one, superpowers, as opposed to superpowering, means when you look at, and another study did this, Boston University together with OpenAI's research team and BCG, they looked at, well, what happens when we ask people not to use GenAI at something they already know how to do? What happens when we ask them to do something with the assistance of GenAI where they don't have any skills? And the outcome was pretty astonishing. They asked them something very unique, very specific, where you really need a lot of ingrained knowledge. And when the people were using a GenAI assistant, at the first go, they performed at 83% compared to the benchmark of experts in that area. So from the get-go, you basically got a superpower. You can do something almost as good as somebody trained and skilled in that, even though you yourself have no knowledge of it. We can do new things. And if you think through this transformation of work fundamentally changes how we think about value generation in the enterprise, how we run operations, how we do talent management, and how we do hiring. Now, the second dimension that we tend to forget when we get tunnel vision on productivity is this one. Now, transforming our companies beyond productivity is really key. Number one, it's key because the further right you go, the more it becomes not just about efficiency, but also revenue upside. Number two is that if we don't do redesign of our internal operations and our externally facing operations, how we engage with customers, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. By that I mean, if you take GenAI and you just sprinkle it here and sprinkle it there into the existing processes, yes, those processes are going to get better. But that's wrong. That's not the way to do it. You need to sit down and you need to rethink those processes for the era of AI. You need to rethink your operations for the era of AI. And if that sounds familiar, that's because we have been at this point before. When 10 years or so ago, digitalization started, we realized that simply taking a digital copy of an existing process is going to lead to failure. We all tried this with onboarding, by the way, right? Everybody who did digital onboarding first just did a digital version of the paper-based stuff that somebody needed to fill out, and we were then surprised that neither customers nor employees were happy and we didn't see any of the benefits. So to really get the upside from GenAI, you need to rethink the way your operations work. Only then do you get the full benefits of it. And that's another important lesson learned for me. So don't fall for the tunnel vision in either of these two dimensions, because otherwise your GenAI strategy won't work. And that's it from my side for this little introduction. Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to our panel.